Imagine 3 women, each with a crown on her head and a heart filled with dark intentions. Their stories are surrounded by intrigue, betrayal, and acts of cruelty that have resonated through the centuries as symbols of evil and manipulation. They are Jezebel, Athaliah, and Herodias. Let us analyze the lives of these queens, whose terrible actions shaped history in unimaginable ways. Once upon a time, in a far-off land, there was a Phoenician princess named Jezebel. Born in the prosperous kingdom of Phoenicia, Jezebel grew up surrounded by wealth and comfort. She was the daughter of Ethbal, king of the Sidonians, and from an early age she was instructed in the worship of Baal, the chief god of her people. Baal was a pagan god, known as the god of rain and fertility, and his worship was deeply rooted in the practices and beliefs of the Phoenicians. When Jezebel reached the appropriate age, her father arranged a strategic marriage with King Ahab of Israel. This marriage not only united 2 powerful kingdoms but also sealed a crucial political alliance. Jezebel, with her beauty and cunning, soon found herself in the court of Israel, crowned as queen alongside Ahab. From the first day of her reign, Jezebel made it clear that she would not abandon her beliefs and traditions. She introduced the worship of Baal in Israel, openly challenging the faith of the people in Yahweh, the one true God of the Israelites. She ordered the construction of a temple dedicated to Baal in Samaria, the capital of the kingdom, and promoted sacrifices and rituals in honor of her God. So far you have noticed that the story of these queens is truly surrounded by evil, but there are still many things I will reveal next that will surprise you. But first, check if you have liked the video. This is important so that YouTube continues to show you videos like this, which will undoubtedly strengthen your faith. Jezebel's influence in the court of Israel was immediate and profound. Under her direction, altars and places of worship for Baal were erected throughout the kingdom. The prophets of Yahweh, who opposed these pagan practices, were persecuted, and many of them were killed on Jezebel's orders. She not only sought to impose her religion but also to eradicate any opposition to her rule and her beliefs. King Ahab, initially hesitant, was seduced by Jezebel's charisma and determination. He soon found himself participating in rituals and ceremonies in honor of Baal, drifting further and further away from the worship of Yahweh. The people of Israel, confused and fearful, watched as their land sank into idolatry and spiritual chaos. However, not everyone was willing to submit to Jezebel's new impositions. The prophet Elijah, a brave and devout man, rose against the queen and her idolatry. He confronted Ahab and Jezebel, proclaiming the words of Yahweh and warning of the terrible consequences their evil would bring upon Israel. Jezebel, furious at Elijah's resistance, declared him her enemy and vowed to hunt him down. But Elijah, protected by Yahweh, continued his mission, defying the queen and calling the people to return to the true faith. Jezebel, the idolatrous queen of Israel, was not content with merely worshiping her pagan gods. Her ambition and determination went far beyond that. Her goal was to completely eradicate the faith in Yahweh and consolidate the worship of Baal throughout the kingdom of Israel. To achieve this, she did not hesitate to use violence and terror. Just as Jezebel committed various sins consciously, we end up committing some without even realizing it, significantly weakening our faith, causing terrible things in our lives. That's why I have made available to you my digital book, Guide to Faith, Lessons from the Bible, and left it for you to download in the first pinned comment. This book will help you see all the acts that weaken your faith without you realizing it, and we'll help you strengthen it with the teachings of the Bible that will transform your life. Click on the first pinned comment now, as we have only a few units, and it will soon be withdrawn. Click now and download your digital book. From her position of power, Jezebel launched a fierce campaign against the prophets of Yahweh, the men of God who remained faithful to the true faith and denounced the pagan practices introduced by the queen. These prophets were the voice of justice and truth amid an increasingly corrupted kingdom, and their very existence was a direct threat to Jezebel's plans. With calculated coldness, Jezebel ordered the capture and execution of many of these prophets. No matter how respected or revered they were, if they opposed her and Baal, their fate was sealed. The queen used spies and loyal soldiers to track down the prophets, giving them no respite or opportunity to escape. One of the darkest moments of her reign was when she ordered the massacre of a large number of prophets in a single day. The blood of the righteous ran through the streets, and fear gripped the hearts of the people. People began to hide their faith, fearing that any display of devotion to Yahweh might lead to their death. But not all prophets were captured. Some managed to escape and took refuge in caves and remote places, where they continued to pray and cry out to God in secret. Among these brave men was the prophet Elijah, who became Jezebel's main adversary. His unshakable faith and ability to perform miracles in the name of Yahweh made him a symbol of hope for the oppressed faithful. Jezebel's persecution not only affected the prophets but also had a devastating impact on the entire kingdom. The teachings and values of Yahweh, which had guided Israel for generations, were being suppressed and replaced by pagan rituals and sacrifices. Morality and justice were crumbling, and the kingdom of Israel was sinking into spiritual chaos. Despite everything, Jezebel's influence could not extinguish the flame of faith in Yahweh. Amid the suffering and oppression, the people of God maintained hope. They knew their God was more powerful than any queen or pagan god, and they trusted that somehow justice would prevail. Jezebel, blinded by her own power and arrogance, could not foresee that her reign of terror would have an abrupt and violent end. The prophecies of the men of God, the same ones she tried to silence, predicted her downfall and the restoration of faith in Israel. In the region of Jezreel, there lived a just and honest man named Naboth. Naboth owned a beautiful vineyard that had belonged to his family for generations. This vineyard was not only his source of sustenance but also a family legacy he deeply valued. One day, King Ahab, walking through his lands, noticed Naboth's vineyard. He wished to expand his royal gardens and thought that vineyard would be perfect for his purposes. So, Ahab approached Naboth with an apparently generous offer. "Give me your vineyard so that I can turn it into a herb garden. In return, I will give you a better vineyard, or, if you prefer, I will pay you its value in money." Naboth, faithful to the traditions and laws of Israel, firmly replied, "May Yahweh forbid me from giving you the inheritance of my fathers." For Naboth, the vineyard was not just land but a sacred part of his family heritage that had to be preserved. Frustrated and enraged, Ahab returned to the palace, where he locked himself in his room, refusing to eat or speak to anyone. His wife Jezebel, noticing his dejection, approached him and asked, "Why are you so downcast that you won't even eat?" Ahab told her what had happened, explaining how Naboth had rejected his offer. Jezebel, with a cold and calculating smile, said, "Are you the king of Israel or not? Get up, eat, and be happy, for I will get you Naboth's vineyard." Jezebel, with her characteristic cunning and lack of scruples, devised a sinister plan to seize the vineyard. She wrote letters in Ahab's name and sealed them with the royal seal. In these letters, she ordered the leaders of Jezreel to summon Naboth to a public assembly and falsely accuse him of cursing God and the king. Jezebel found 2 unscrupulous men willing to act as false witnesses. During the assembly, these men testified against Naboth, claiming they had heard him blaspheme against God and the king. The crowd, outraged by these false accusations, took Naboth outside the city and stoned him to death. With Naboth dead, Jezebel approached Ahab and said, "Get up and take possession of Naboth's vineyard, which he refused to sell you. Naboth is no longer alive. He is dead." Ahab, showing no remorse, immediately went to take possession of the vineyard. However, Jezebel's actions did not go unnoticed by Yahweh. The prophet Elijah received a message from God and was sent to confront Ahab. Elijah, with courage and firmness, presented himself before the king in Naboth's vineyard and declared, "Thus says Yahweh, have you murdered and also taken possession of the inheritance? In the same place where the dogs licked Naboth's blood, they will also lick your blood." Elijah pronounced a severe judgment on Ahab and Jezebel, predicting not only the downfall of their dynasty but also a tragic and violent end for both. Elijah's words were a powerful reminder that although the wicked may prosper temporarily, divine justice always prevails. The story of Jezebel, the idolatrous and ruthless queen, reaches its climax with her tragic and violent downfall, just as the prophet Elijah had predicted. This conclusion, filled with drama and divine justice, serves as a powerful reminder that evil, no matter how great, always meets its end. The prophet Elijah, a man of God known for his courage and fervor, had warned Jezebel about her fate. In an encounter with King Ahab, Elijah proclaimed the words of Yahweh, "Thus says Yahweh, the dogs will devour Jezebel by the wall of Jezreel." These words echoed ominously over the queen's future. Over time, Jezebel's acts and her malevolent influence continued to sow chaos and destruction in Israel. But divine judgment was imminent. After Ahab's death in battle, his son Joram ascended to the throne, but the kingdom remained mired in idolatry and injustice. God had a plan to end this era of corruption. A man named Jehu, a commander in the army of Israel, was anointed by the prophet Elisha, Elijah's successor, to carry out divine judgment against the house of Ahab and Jezebel. Determined and fierce, Jehu set out for Jezreel, where Jezebel resided in her palace. Upon hearing of Jehu's approach, Jezebel adorned herself with makeup and styled her hair, gazing out the palace window. Perhaps she believed her beauty and cunning could save her once more. From the window, Jezebel challenged Jehu, asking if he came in peace. But Jehu, unwavering, shouted to the eunuchs attending her, "Who is on my side? Who?" 2 or 3 eunuchs, weary of Jezebel's tyranny, looked out, and Jehu commanded them, "Throw her down." Friends, a quick reminder, don't forget to download your digital book, Guide to Faith, Lessons from the Bible. It's very important to download it now, before the units run out. Just click now on the link in the first pinned comment. In an act of betrayal and justice, the eunuchs obeyed. Jezebel was thrown out the window, falling to the ground with a fatal blow. Her blood splattered the walls and Jehu's horses, who trampled her without mercy. The dogs of the city, as Elijah had prophesied, came and devoured her body, leaving only her skull, hands, and feet. Jehu, fulfilling divine will, entered the palace and ordered Jezebel's burial, as she was the daughter of a king. However, when the servants went out to gather her remains, they found very little. thus fulfilling the prophecy entirely. The news of Jezebel's fall spread quickly throughout the kingdom, marking the end of an era of idolatry and evil. Jezebel's story, the idolatrous and ruthless queen, teaches a powerful lesson about divine justice. Although the wicked may prosper for a time, God's justice is inescapable. Jezebel, who lived a life of oppression, idolatry, and violence, met an end fitting her actions, fulfilling the word of the Lord through his prophet. This account not only closes a dark chapter in Israel's history, but also teaches us about the importance of faith, justice, and integrity. Jezebel's fall reminds us that evil never has the final word and that justice, though delayed, always prevails. If you want to learn more about the story of Jezebel, from her birth to the end of her reign, just click on the video that now appears for you. I prepared this video especially for you. Now let's talk about the second queen, Queen Athaliah. In the kingdom of Judah, a new shadow loomed over the throne. Athaliah, the daughter of the infamous Jezebel, had inherited not only her mother's beauty but also her cunning and malice. Athaliah married Jehoram, king of Judah, and together they ruled for several years. However, Athaliah's influence in the kingdom soon became evident, for she, like her mother, introduced the worship of Baal and other pagan practices. During Jehoram's reign, the people of Judah began to experience a spiritual decline similar to that which had affected Israel under Jezebel's rule. Idolatry and corruption spread, and many began to forget Yahweh's laws and traditions. But the true horror was yet to come after Jehoram's death. Jehoram and Athaliah had several children, and one of them, Ahaziah, ascended the throne after his father's death. However, Ahaziah's reign was brief. In a battle against Jehu, the same man who had carried out divine judgment against Jezebel, Ahaziah was mortally wounded. With her son's death, Athaliah saw a unique and ruthless opportunity to consolidate her power. With cold and calculated cruelty, Athaliah took drastic measures to ensure that no other member of the royal family could claim the throne. She ordered the murder of all legitimate heirs, her own grandchildren, and other members of the royal family. This massacre was one of the most atrocious acts of her reign, plunging the palace and the kingdom into a state of terror. The news of the slaughter spread quickly, and the people of Judah were filled with horror and sadness. Athaliah's usurpation was a devastating blow to the Davidic dynasty and to Yahweh's faithful followers. Athaliah proclaimed herself queen, ruling with an iron fist and continuing the idolatrous practices she had learned from her mother. During her reign, Athaliah did everything possible to eradicate the worship of Yahweh and promote the cult of Baal. The Temple of Jerusalem, the most sacred place for the people of Judah, was affected by the queen's influence. Priests and Levites who opposed her were persecuted, and many were forced to hide or abandon their sacred duties. However, amid this darkness, there were those who had not lost hope. In secret, some loyal members of the Davidic dynasty and devout followers of Yahweh began to plan how to restore the true line of succession and bring justice back to the throne of Judah. Among these brave individuals was the high priest Jehoiada, who, along with his wife Jehosheba, managed to hide one of Athaliah's grandsons, Joash, in the temple of the Lord. Joash, the legitimate heir, grew up in secret within the temple, protected by those who still held to faith and justice. Once Athaliah had consolidated her power by brutally eliminating the legitimate heirs, she ruled Judah with an iron fist and a cruelty that seemed to know no bounds. Her reign, which lasted 6 years, was an era of terror and darkness for the people of Judah. From the beginning of her rule, Athaliah set out to impose the worship of Baal, the pagan god of her mother Jezebel. To this end, she ordered the construction of temples and altars dedicated to Baal throughout the kingdom, especially in Jerusalem, the holy city. Pagan sacrifices and rituals became commonplace, and idolatry spread like a plague. The temple of Yahweh, which had been the center of worship and spiritual life in Judah, was desecrated. Priests and Levites who refused to follow Athaliah's orders were persecuted, imprisoned, and even executed. Religious corruption deepened, and true worship of Yahweh was suppressed. Athaliah wanted to ensure that no trace of the old faith remained to challenge her authority. Fear gripped the hearts of the people. No one dared speak against the queen or her policies, fearing reprisals. Families were forced to participate in pagan rituals under the threat of severe punishment. Injustice and oppression became the daily bread, and the kingdom of Judah sank into deep despair. Despite everything, in the hearts of some faithful, a spark of hope still burned. In secret, and at great risk, the devout of Yahweh continued to pray and keep the true faith alive. Among them, the high priest Jehoiada played a crucial role. Jehoiada, along with his wife Jehosheba, had hidden the young Joash, the only legitimate heir to the throne, in the temple of Yahweh. For 6 years, Joash was raised in secret, away from Athaliah's reach. Jehoiada and Jehosheba knew their mission was dangerous, but they also understood it was vital for the survival of faith and justice in Judah. While Athaliah ruled with terror, they meticulously planned the right moment to restore the throne to its rightful heir and end the queen's tyranny. Athaliah's reign was not only marked by idolatry but also by injustice and oppression. Under her command, the values and principles that had guided Judah for generations were trampled. But despite the darkness the queen had brought, the light of hope and justice was not entirely extinguished. This era of terror imposed by Athaliah was destined to come to an end. The courage and faith of those who still believed in Yahweh would be the forces that, at the opportune moment, would change the course of history. Amid Athaliah's reign of terror, a small light of hope burned in secret. Joash, the only legitimate heir to the throne of Judah, had been saved from the massacre of his family thanks to the courage and cunning of his aunt Jehosheba. Jehosheba, sister of King Ahaziah and wife of the high priest Jehoiada, knew the future of the Davidic dynasty depended on the survival of this child. One dark and dangerous night, as Athaliah's violence raged through the palace, Jehosheba took the young Joash in her arms and quietly carried him to the temple of Yahweh. She knew this sacred place was the only refuge where Athaliah would not dare to seek him. With the help of her husband Jehoiada, Jehosheba hid Joash in a secret room within the temple. For 6 long years, Joash lived hidden in the temple, protected by the high priest and his aunt. While Athaliah ruled with an iron fist and promoted the worship of Baal, Joash grew up in anonymity, learning about Yahweh's laws and the history of his people. Although his childhood was marked by fear and caution, Joash received an education that would prepare him for the day he could claim his rightful place on the throne. Jehosheba and Jehoiada demonstrated extraordinary bravery in hiding Joash. Every day, they faced the risk of being discovered and executed by Athaliah. However, their faith in Yahweh and their commitment to the line of David gave them the strength to carry on. They knew they were protecting not just a child, but also the legacy of their ancestors and God's promise to his people. Meanwhile, the people of Judah continued to suffer under Athaliah's oppressive reign. The worship of Yahweh had been almost completely suppressed, and many wondered if they would ever see a just king on the throne again. However, in the heart of the temple, hope still beat. Joash, though young, represented the possibility of a new era of justice and devotion to Yahweh. Before I tell you more details of this story, check if you are already subscribed to the channel. It's very important to subscribe, as I will soon publish a new video that will strengthen your faith and understanding with God. As the years passed, Jehoiada and Jehoshaphat meticulously prepared for the moment Joash would be revealed to the people. They knew they could not act rashly. The child's safety and the success of their plan depended on careful planning. During those 6 years, they formed a support network among the priests and Levites who remained faithful to Yahweh, ensuring that when the time came, they would be ready to act. Joash's hiding was not just an act of survival, but also a symbol of true faith's resistance against oppression and idolatry. Each day Joash spent in the temple, learning and growing, was a day closer to the restoration of David's throne and Judah's return to Yahweh's ways. Athaliah's reign of terror was about to end. For 6 years, the high priest Jehoiada had protected the young Joash, the legitimate heir to the throne of Judah, hiding him in the temple. Now, the time to act had arrived. Jehoiada knew he had to carefully plan Athaliah's overthrow to restore David's line and return justice to the kingdom. Jehoiada secretly gathered the priests, Levites, and temple guards. With great discretion, he revealed the plan to overthrow Athaliah and crown Joash as the rightful king of Judah. The high priest reminded them of the importance of this act not only for the throne's restoration, but also for preserving faith in Yahweh. In the 7th year of Athaliah's reign, Jehoiada decided it was the right time to act. He summoned all leaders loyal to Yahweh and the Davidic lineage to the temple. There, in a solemn and hopeful ceremony, Jehoiada brought Joash out of hiding and presented him to them. Surprise and joy mixed on the faces of those present upon seeing the young heir, alive and well. With determination and a well-crafted plan, Jehoiada organized the guards into 3 groups. 1/3 would protect the young Joash in the temple. Another third would guard the temple gates to ensure no one entered without permission, and the last third would watch the royal palace. The guards received sacred weapons from the temple, which had been kept since King David's days. On the appointed day, Jehoiada brought Joash to the temple's courtyard and anointed him as king, placing the crown on his head and giving him a copy of the law. Then he loudly proclaimed, "Long live King Joash!" The people, upon hearing these words, erupted in shouts of joy and acclamation. The priests blew trumpets and the Levites sang hymns of praise, filling the temple with an atmosphere of jubilation and renewed hope. Friends, once again a reminder, don't forget to download your digital book, Guide to Faith, Lessons from the Bible. It's very important to download it now, before the units run out. Just click now on the link in the first pinned comment. The sound of celebration reached Athaliah's palace, and upon hearing the tumult, she hurried to the temple to see what was happening. Upon arriving, she saw the young Joash standing by the royal column, surrounded by guards and people acclaiming him. Athaliah tore her clothes and cried out, "Treason! Treason!" But her cry of despair was in vain. Jehoiada ordered the guards to remove her from the temple to avoid profaning it with her execution. She was taken to the palace courtyard, where she was executed without mercy. Thus ended Athaliah's reign of terror, and divine justice was fulfilled. With Athaliah's fall, the kingdom of Judah experienced a spiritual and political renaissance. Joash, though young, was guided by the wise and devout Jehoiada, who instructed him in Yahweh's laws and the art of just governance. The temple was purified of idolatry, and Yahweh's worship was restored throughout the kingdom. Athaliah's fall marked the end of a dark era and the beginning of a new chapter in Judah's history. It was a reminder that although evil may reign for a time, God's justice always prevails. The courage and faith of Jehoiada and Jehoshaphat not only saved young Joash but also preserved hope and God's promise for his people. Now let's talk about the third queen, Queen Herodias. The story of Herodias is a tale of manipulation, vengeance, and power. Herodias was an ambitious and cunning woman, known for her crucial role in the tragic death of John the Baptist. Married to Herod Antipas, the tetrarch of Galilee and Perea, Herodias was no stranger to the intrigues of power. Herodias had originally been the wife of Herod Philip, the brother of Herod Antipas. However, she left Philip to marry Antipas, an act that was harshly criticized by John the Baptist. John, a brave and fervent prophet, publicly denounced this union, calling it immoral and illegal according to God's laws. John's words did not fall on deaf ears. Herod Antipas respected John as a just and holy man, and although he was concerned about his criticisms, he protected John from severe reprisals. However, Herodias was deeply enraged by John for exposing their relationship to public scorn. Her hatred towards the prophet grew with each sermon and every word he spoke against her and her husband. Herodias's resentment turned into a burning desire for vengeance. She waited patiently for the right moment to get rid of John the Baptist. That opportunity came during the celebration of Herod Antipas's birthday. At an opulent banquet, surrounded by his courtiers and officials, Herod Antipas hosted a great feast. Music filled the air, and wine flowed freely. Amid the celebration, Herodias saw her opportunity and played her most cunning card, her daughter, Salome. Salome, young and beautiful, was called to dance before the guests. Her performance was mesmerizing and captivated everyone present, including Herod. Fascinated by his stepdaughter's dance, Herod, in a fit of generosity and drunkenness, promised to give her anything she asked for, up to half of his kingdom. Salome, having been previously instructed by her mother, wasted no time in responding. She approached Herod and, with a soft but firm voice, said, "I want you to give me right now, on a platter, the head of John the Baptist." Herod was horrified by the request. Though he feared John and knew he was a just and holy man, he also feared breaking his promise in front of his guests. Tormented by the decision, Herod finally succumbed to the pressure of the situation and gave the order. The guards were sent to the prison where John the Baptist was held. The prophet, who had spent his life preaching truth and justice, was beheaded in that dark cell. His head was brought on a platter and given to Salome, who then presented it to her mother, Herodias. Herodias had finally achieved her revenge. The man who had dared to challenge her and expose her sins was dead. However, her triumph was grim and short-lived. Divine justice always finds its way, and the actions of Herodias and Herod Antipas would not go unpunished. Nevertheless, in that moment of apparent triumph, Herodias could not foresee the long-term consequences of her actions. The execution of John the Baptist was more than an act of vengeance. It was an event that shook the consciences of many. John's followers, upon learning of his death, felt deep sorrow but also renewed determination to continue his message. John's bravery and sacrifice were not in vain. His legacy endured, and his influence continued to resonate through the years. Meanwhile, Herod Antipas was haunted by guilt and remorse. He had succumbed to Herodias's manipulations and the pressure of his guests, committing an act he knew was wrong. The shadow of John the Baptist haunted him, and the awareness of his injustice never fully left him. The story of John the Baptist's execution shows us the depths of human corruption and evil, but also the resilience and integrity of those who remain faithful to the truth. John the Baptist, with his life and death, reminds us of the importance of courage and justice. His sacrifice stands as an eternal testament that truth, though it may be silenced temporarily, can never be completely extinguished. The account of his execution serves as both a warning and a lesson. Divine justice always prevails, and those who seek vengeance and manipulation, like Herodias, will face the consequences of their actions. The life of John the Baptist continues to be a beacon of hope and faith, inspiring generations to live with integrity and courage. This is the story of John the Baptist, a prophet whose voice was silenced but whose message lives on. A man who challenged power and paid the highest price, but whose death sealed a legacy of justice and truth that endures to this day. The stories of Jezebel, Athaliah, and Herodias teach us profound and eternal lessons about human nature and the inherent dangers of unchecked power. These women, though from different times and circumstances, share a common thread of corruption and evil that illustrates how power, when misused, can lead to atrocious acts. Jezebel, the Phoenician queen who married King Ahab of Israel, brought with her the worship of Baal, directly challenging the faith in Yahweh. Her influence led to an era of idolatry and violence in Israel, where the prophets of God were persecuted and killed. Jezebel's story reminds us of how idolatry can corrupt an entire nation, driving people away from true faith and plunging them into spiritual chaos. Athaliah, Jezebel's daughter, followed in her mother's footsteps in terms of wickedness and ambition. After her son's death, she murdered all legitimate heirs to the throne of Judah to rule alone. Her reign of terror was marked by the worship of Baal and oppression. Athaliah's story shows how unchecked ambition can lead to the destruction of one's own family and the just order, plunging the kingdom into darkness and fear. Herodias, the wife of Herod Antipas, used her influence to manipulate and exact revenge on John the Baptist, a just man who had denounced her illicit relationship. Through her daughter Salome, she achieved John's execution, thus sealing her revenge. Herodias' story warns us of the dangers of vengeance and manipulation, demonstrating how hatred and resentment can lead to extreme acts of evil. These stories not only speak to the past but also serve as warnings for the present and future. They remind us that power, when used for selfish and corrupt purposes, can cause incalculable harm. Idolatry, unchecked ambition, and vengeance are destructive forces that can lead even the most powerful down a path of destruction and suffering. However, amid these stories of darkness, we also find examples of bravery, justice, and faith. The prophets who opposed Jezebel, those who hid Joash from Athaliah's cruelty, and John the Baptist's bravery in denouncing sin show us that the light of true justice never completely fades. Through faith and courage, it is possible to resist evil and keep hope alive. Reflecting on the lives and actions of Jezebel, Athaliah, and Herodias, we must remember the importance of using power with wisdom and justice. These stories call us to be vigilant and to reject corruption and evil in all its forms. They invite us to stand firm in our faith and to defend truth and justice, regardless of the circumstances. Ultimately, the lives of these three wicked queens teach us that, although power can corrupt and lead to extreme evil, divine justice always prevails. The biblical narrative is filled with examples of how God, through his prophets and faithful servants, intervenes to restore order and justice. These eternal lessons inspire us to live with integrity and to always seek good, reminding us that in the end, truth and justice always triumph. Thank you for watching until here. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and give a like to receive more videos like this. Let me know in the comments if you already knew about any of these queens. And don't forget to download your digital book in the first pinned comment of this video. See you in the next video, friends.